Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction. Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction. It sounds awful.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
It's a catchy way of trying to explain a very complex event.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
And also it plays to the fear factor.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases to help with intelligence and logistics to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense.
In 1991, Iraq had significant capability in the area of chemical weapons, biological weapons, nuclear weapons production capability, and long-range ballistic missile manufacturing capability. By 1998, the chemical weapons infrastructure had been completely dismantled or destroyed by UNSCOM.
My name's Grant Collins. I'm a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War. I was a corporal in the 1st Battalion, 23rd Marines. Was in Iraq from August of 04 to May of 05. A few months after I was there, I mean, a lot of things weren't sitting right with me. The command structure, the missions that we were getting didn't make any sense. We're going after people, Mujahideen or Muj, and they didn't have any idea which ones were the right ones. We're kicking in the wrong doors, terrifying children, helicopters screaming over their heads at night, and I'm trying to calm the women and children while the men were dragged and separated out and completely humiliated in front of their families.
For anybody to argue that you don't want to send troops carelessly into no-win, endless wars to think you're against the troops, it's nonsense. When I was in the military, I was still in '65, and that's when the escalation came in Vietnam. The last thing I was wanting to say, oh, I want somebody in there that wants to expand the war. Why don't we go into Cambodia and Laos? No, I didn't want that. Troops don't want to go to war. People join the Guard. I was in a Guard unit as well as active duty. People join the Guard and reserves because they want to defend the country. They don't want to take 6 trips to the Middle East.
Congressman Paul, thank you for joining us. First of all, you think the president does not have the right to engage the U.S. in a NATO-led effort in Libya without Congress's approval. Today, in his press conference, the president made clear that he believes the law does allow him to make this commitment on his own. Listen to this for a moment, if you would.
I'm not a Supreme Court justice, so I'm not going to put my constitutional law professor hat on here. Do I think that our actions in any way violate the War Powers Resolution? The answer is no. So I don't even have to get to the constitutional question.
When it comes to the kind of military action where we want to build a coalition and work with our international partners, then obviously we would like to have some kind of legal basis on which to do it, as we did in Libya.
Now, some sort of legal basis. We worried about international legal basis, but nobody worried about the fundamental constitutional legal basis that this Congress has over war. We were not asked, stunningly, in direct violation of the War Powers Act, whether or not you believe it's constitutional. It certainly didn't comply with it. We spent our time worrying about the UN, the Arab League, NATO, and too little time, in my opinion, worried about the elected representatives of the United States. Do you think that you can act without Congress and initiate a no-fly zone in Syria without congressional approval?
You know, again, our goal would be to seek international permission, and we would come to the Congress and inform you and determine how best to approach this, whether or not we would want to get permission from the Congress. I think those are issues we would have to discuss as we decide what to do here.
Well, I'm almost breathless about that, because what I heard you say is we're going to seek international approval, and then we'll come and tell the Congress what we might do, and we might seek congressional approval.
No, well,
I want to just say to you, that's a big dish. Wouldn't you agree? You've served in the Congress.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree that that's would be pretty breathtaking to the average American?
The answer is no. So I don't even have to get to the constitutional question.
Simply, sir, what's your reaction?
That's a horrible statement. No, he should get to the Constitution. He doesn't have to be a constitutional lawyer. You take an oath of office to obey the Constitution. If we don't know what it says, how can we take the oath? The Constitution is very clear. You don't go to war without a declaration. I agree there's some confusion with the War Powers Resolution because technically it legalized war rather than prevented war. So I don't particularly like that bill, but even if it's a law of the land, even that he has violated because he can't go to war by talking to the United Nations and NATO and refusing to talk to the Congress. I think this is so sad, and the kind of thing that I have been fighting with both parties for decades now. I think it's taken one step worse because he's been a little bit more aggressive in declaring that he is the unitary president, that he can do what he wants. He doesn't have to tell the Congress. So I find it rather sad that he has taken that position.
We'll get back to the question of consulting Congress, but first I want to ask you about a point Senator John Kerry raised. As you know, he's the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, and he raised the point that if Congress wanted a say in this, they actually had a chance. Listen to this.
You're saying the president violated the process here and didn't come to the Congress. He did come to the Congress. He sent us a letter requesting us to do the authorization, and we didn't do it. That's the simple fact here.
He's saying that Congress dropped the ball at the very beginning. Do you acknowledge that Congress could have done something and didn't?
Oh, they could have done a lot more, a lot sooner. That is true. They shouldn't have waited for more than 90 days. They should have immediately let the president know that he was violating the War Powers Resolution and the Constitution. But I don't know what he's talking about on the appropriations. He has no explicit appropriations for this war. So he doesn't have the money and he doesn't have the authority, and we're slipping into another war. Nobody can even count the wars. Nobody knows whether this is number 4 or number 5. With a country that's flat out broke, and we allow our presidents to do this, this just means that, the constitutional process and the economic situation in this country is totally out of control.